Welcome to season 3 of the Iceman Kicking Podcast. My name is Brett Arkelian. Kick your feet up, relax, and enjoy this episode of the Iceman Kicking Podcast. What keeps you in a place, and what helps sustain a job when so many guys end up jumping around? Like, what's the secret?
It says, number one, do a good job where you're at, and the world will build a pathway to your door. And the second thing is find a need and fill it.
Welcome to the Iceman Kicking Podcast. It's the show with cool questions, even colder guests. And I am your host, as always, Brett Arkelian. Really fired up for this guest today when you talk about the premier special teams coordinators in college football. His name often comes up a little bit about today's guest, Coach John Baxter. He seems to have coached everywhere, started out his career at Iowa State in Ames, Iowa in 1986, went to Arizona, spent some time at Maine, back to Arizona, had some success there at Tulane, and most notably for the majority of his career spent time at Fresno State. And as I was a kid from fourth grade, we'd park on Browning Street and we'd walk over by the Newman Center Church and we'd go watch Fresno State go and block a bunch of kicks. So had a lot of success there at Fresno State until 2009. And then he went to the University of Southern California, one of the premier institutions on the West Coast, and spent time at Michigan, USC, and is back at Fresno State. Coach John Baxter, thanks for being on the show today. How's Fresno treating you?
It's great. I mean, it's Fresno summers. It's triple digits every day, right? But closing in on training camp and looking forward to it.
Good. I'm fired up. Yeah, I'm fired up. We got the opportunity. I know you're getting going here now, Coach. You love to rope. Okay, am I saying that right? That's roping. You love that we both share passion for the show Yellowstone. I know you'll come out in the jeans, the belt buckle, the cowboy hat. Is this true to say, are you truly the last great cowboy of college football coaching, or do you know anyone that shares that same passion as you?
I don't know another one. But one of the things that happens when you have consistency in your career and you spend a long time at one place, you develop hobbies. Okay. If you move every 2 years of your life, it's hard to even know your neighbors. But essentially, I've only had 2 jobs for the last 22 years. And I know those jobs well. I know who I am. I know what makes me happy. And, that whole statement of the grass isn't always greener on the other side of the fence. The only grass I'm worried about is my grass. Okay. And my grass is green if you mow it, fertilize it, and water it. So yeah, we've raised our kids. My kids went from birth to college with one move in the same state. And so, they grew up playing high school sports. They had horses. One of my daughters did high school rodeo and all that stuff. So it's been a really good run.
Definitely. And you hit on that. It's something I'm interested to ask as someone who's been there and done it. My special teams coordinator at Virginia Tech, James Shebas, was really proud of only coaching under 2 head coaches in the duration of, I don't know what it was, 15, 20 years. You have had almost that same experience. What keeps you in a place, and what helps sustain a job when so many guys end up jumping around? Like, what's the secret to being employed and doing a great job all the time?
Right. Well, I'll tell you a couple things. When I was in college, I was a physical education major, and the head coach had us read an article by a guy named Shirley Majors, who was Johnny Majors' father. He was the head coach at the University of South in Sewanee, Tennessee. And the name of the article was called My Advice to Young Coaches. And he said 2 things in that article that, let's say I'm quoting almost 40 years later to you. It says, number one, do a good job where you're at, and the world will build a pathway to your door. And the second thing is find a need and fill it. Okay. So early in my career, I made all the natural short-term moves, being I was Iowa State for Jim Kreiner, who got let go that year. Jim Walden came and retained me as a GA. So I was 2 years Iowa State under 2 coaching staffs. I got hired at the University of Arizona for my 3rd GA shift. in 3 years. And at the end of that year, I got a full-time job at the University of Maine. I was there 1 year, and we had a great season in 1989. And the head coach at Arizona called me and asked me if I'd be interested in coming back to Arizona, where I had GA'd. Interesting, I got hired at the University of Maine because of a relationship I had at Iowa State with Tom Lichtenberg, who was there. I was at Arizona for 2 years and then ultimately went to the University of Maryland, which is kind of crazy, but I went for a $10,000 pay raise from $45,000 to $55,000. I mean, those numbers don't even compute with the numbers being thrown around with today's salaries. But I was probably a short-sighted move, but nonetheless, that's where I learned that moving for money is not the reason to move. Okay. We ultimately lost our job there. So I ended up at Tulane, and I was there 3 years. We lost our job there. And at the same time, Pat Hill had gotten a Fresno State job. So at that point, I had been 2 coaching staffs at Iowa State, Arizona, Maine, Arizona, Maryland, 6 institutes, 6 moves, 5 different coaching staffs. And that all happened between 1986 and 1996. Okay, so 10 years. But the relationship with Pat Hill, he was the center guard, or he was the offensive line coach at Arizona, and I was the tight end coach. So the pattern that you can see in my career is I've been hired back to where I GA'd. I've been hired by people that I knew, people that I worked with. So that speaks to that article of find a need and fill it, which is, kicking game, academic problem children, tight ends. I've coached every position in the game now except quarterback as a position coach, and developing relationships, right? So now here I come to Fresno State with Pat Hill. And, but the thing that had changed in my life is my wife and I had a 1-year-old daughter at that point, Kelly Baxter, who's now 26. And the second daughter, Mackenzie Baxter, was on the way. She was born in May of 97. When they say having kids changes your life, it does. And I did not want the instability and the movement that I had had in my career for them, but I wanted to be a college coach. Well, with Pat, I shared a value system in how we coach the game, in developing toughness, in how we recruit, and how we discipline our players, and what we stand for. And over that time, we won an unbelievable amount of games. My last game at Fresno State was in 2009, December of 2009, and that was our 100th win together. Okay, so through that time, when you win, you're going to have opportunities to move. I had them. Everybody had them. So I said no to every single one of those, and there was a whole bunch of them in the NFL, in college, whatever, because I loved the value system of the head coach. I loved the program I worked in. I liked the guys I worked with, and I loved the way my kids were growing up. I loved the schools that they went to, and so there's a dollar figure associated with happiness. Now, what it is, I don't know. But if you double my salary and I'm miserable every day, what have you really done? I mean, you can only spend so much money on a house and a mortgage payment and whatever. So all you're doing is banking more money and exchanging that for misery. Okay. So the hardest move of my entire career was in 2009 after that season, when I had an offer from USC and I had told them no 3 times. And of course, Lane Kiffin was the head coach, who was a player here for us. Okay. Again, another relationship that was a long-term relationship. And so Pat looked at the contract and he said, I'm going to tell you one thing, you need to go. You need to protect yourself. They're going to pay you a lot more money than you're making here. And I'm not sure where I'm at with the AD. And sure enough, 10 months later, he got let go. Okay. So then USC, and then Lane got let go. I went to Michigan for a year, and then I came back to USC. So that'll bring us up to date. But the interesting thing with all of that is I'd had a discussion with a guy from Sports Illustrated, and he says, I always like to ask people unique questions. And I said, okay. And he said, there's one thing about your resume I think's unique. And I said, what's that? He says, you've worked at the same school twice, 3 times. Why? Because I was at Arizona twice, I was at USC twice, and I was at Fresno State twice. Find a need and fill it, and do a good job where you're at, and the world will build a pathway to your door. And if you really build relationships and don't burn bridges, that's what happens.
Find a need and fill it. Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, that going back to that area, and I'm sure it's a sense of pride too after being there, right? You would want to go back and be like, hey, I want to do a good job, and they remember what a good job you did and stands out.
Right.
100%.
So I have never gotten a job from a person who I didn't have a relationship with. The hardest job to get was my first one. And from then I made a relationship with somebody who ultimately kept it going.
So hear that, young coaches, it's about the relationships you build, right? Not about reaching out and DMs and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. It's the relationship you build and the job that you do,
Now, Coach, you hit on that a little bit. And again, like I said, I go to my grandma's house on Browning Street, not far from Bulldog Stadium, and went to all these games growing up, have some fantastic memories. There's a few things that stick out to my mind during your time, the 100 wins you and Pat Hill had. And we've talked about this before. In 2001, you guys had some, and Coach Hawk was in on this conversation too, had some bone crushing hits and you really set the tone. And we talked about the hits versus Boise in Oregon State. But what can you tell me about that time that you remember and those games too? I mean, those were really impressive games.
Right. Well, a couple of those hits, well, they're indelible in my mind because they were illegal. Okay. But I mean, back then, it was a 15-yard penalty. Today, you're kicked out of the game for targeting, and you might be going to jail and being sued for assault. Okay. So football is still a really rough game, but we have a much fairer version of the game these days. But the bottom line is, well before Boise State had a hammer and all these other guys. I mean, I can tell you that I know I had the first hammer in college football because I had it in 1989. And be the hammer, not the nail has been my slogan since the beginning. And I can talk confidently that before there were turnover chains and everything else, I mean, I created that because I wanted a blue collar trophy for a blue collar job. And coaching special teams was like finding a need and filling it. Linebacker coaches, tight end coaches were a dime a dozen. You get hired because you can do more, not less. So I became an expert in teaching students how to study and dealing with at-risk students. I became passionate about investigating, how to be a better in terms of coaching the kicking game, both in terms of the technique of kickers, punters, and snappers, and then also the schematics of getting the team to play well. And but when your slogans be the hammer, not the nail, and they play like that, sometimes you get in trouble for it. And I got in some trouble for it. But the fact of the matter is that was 21 years ago, and people are still asking about it. So it did leave a lasting impression.
Coach, it set the tone. I remember being in the stands. I think it was Oregon State. I'm sorry, the player's name again was
Kendall Edwards.
Kendall Edwards.
No, Curtis Edwards, his brother.
Okay,
Curtis. No, it was Kendall. Yeah, it was Kendall for sure.
Yeah, and Kendall made that hit, and flags were obviously flying. I mean, didn't give a chance for that return to catch the ball, but man, it set the tone. We lost it. I mean, that was I think that was legitimately one of the reasons I got into special teams was watching that play and the momentum change, or all you guys block kicks. I know, I don't know if it was 2001, but you guys blocked a kick against San Diego State at home to win the game.
Yeah.
And
they had us beat. The ball was at the 16-yard line. They centered it up. All they had to do is kick it.
And what had happened?
And we blocked it. We called timeout and got the guys over and said, okay, guys, we got to have this one. And we blocked it.
Safety came up from 7 yards out and came running and jumped and just took it out of the air, man. We went crazy.
Right. Yeah. No, it's since 97, the teams I've been with, we're north of 150 block kicks now. So I believe in teaching it. I believe in executing it because, the momentum change in the game and the mindset it takes to play that physically dominant pays dividends in a lot of ways.
How do you get a unit mentality wise to go out there and block 150 kicks? I mean, is it a culture thing? Is it a passion thing? Is it a word thing? Like what sets you guys apart? Why do you guys block so many kicks?
Well, one, we got a system. Okay. We teach them how to do it. And two, I tell people all the time, I mean, I'll go on a hunger strike to find a way to block a kick on you. I mean, it's inordinately important to me. And it's just inordinately important to me. So like, I don't know who else is important to, but those players know when they come in the room that I'm going to have a plan and I'm going to detail that plan and nobody's going to be happy until we execute it. So, you know how that line that, happy wife, happy life. It's more like happy Coach Baxter, happy life. Like, like I am going to relentlessly pursue a physical style of play, and not compromise it.
Absolutely. And that in turn translates on other units, right? Your return unit is like we talked about before, you're going to get better returns if you're coming out harassing the punter and making him uncomfortable and getting in people's heads.
Every return is set up off pressure, because it's just like in baseball, a pitcher's dominance is set up by his fastball. If you don't have a fastball, you can't get guys out. There has to be something that they fear.
Absolutely.
You don't have to block the kick, but they got to be over there going, oh my God, you realize they almost blocked that kick? I mean, that's enough.
Absolutely. Do you have it? So we talk about with our guys too, if you stay in a path, stay in the same plane, or if you're on a plane, stay in the same plane, or if you're, on the backside, you got a cross face. Do you have a term for that with your guys? Like I know there's a lot of different trains of thought, whether it's crossing the punter's face or staying on the same plane. What do you tell your guys?
Take the outside hand, you put it across the ball, and you take your eyes and hands down to the ball. Okay. You literally try to run your hands and eyes right through the ball. Okay. But you got to see the ball. It's just amazing how many guys get there and don't know what to do. And they put their hands up in the air, or they blink, or they whatever. And so you got to build it in where you desensitize them to getting punted in the face, and we desensitize it. And one of the things I do is every year I've done it, I'm 59, so I don't know how long I can keep doing this because it hurts a little more now, but every year in the meeting room, I bring our punter in and I have our punter drop the ball and I block it full speed off him right in the meeting room.
What do you mean?
You got to think if I miss it, it's going to go through a ceiling tile or, whatever else. But
wait, are you talking about you're running at him, or is he?
I start about a yard away.
Yeah. And he just winds up.
And I just take my hands and eyes down the ball. I mean, I try to eat it off his foot. Okay. But, I had a guy this last spring, Carson King was in there and he was punting. I'm like, quit babying it, punt the damn thing. Right. And he did. And I freaking blocked it. And the players love it. They were like, man, what's this guy going to do? I'm like, listen, Like, if I can do it, you can do it.
Dang right, coach. Shoot, you're gonna get in a punt stance soon and
Yeah.
show them some
I mean,
production stuff too.
You got to passionately go after that ball.
And when you're saying desensitize, you put a ball on a string. Do you do stuff with that too, or just easy?
No, I just block footballs off punter's foot
all the time.
I see guys, they got a ball on a string, they got a volleyball, they got a water polo ball, they got a soccer ball. We don't block soccer balls. You get block a football. So we block footballs off punters every day.
Yeah, that's the only way to train it.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen every cockamamie idea out there. The only idea that matters is having a punter punt a ball and take it off his foot. And when I say take it off his foot, I mean, you got to send it back where it came from. You got to try to knock it back through the top of his foot. Like, don't let it leave the foot.
With some anger.
Yeah, exactly. So, right. Imagine playing ping pong. And if you were trying to block a guy's shot off the ping pong paddle, well, you got this ping pong paddle, and that ball can come off that guy's ping pong paddle in any just enormous number of potential angles. But one way that ball won't come off the ping pong paddle is if you trap that ball with another ping pong paddle against the ping pong paddle. It's not going anywhere. Like, don't let that punt get off his foot.
Be the paddle.
Yeah, be the paddle. Be the hammer, not the nail.
That's right. I love that.
Okay.
Now, Coach, what do you think? Switching gears a little bit, what do you think a lot of guys miss on, or what's the fundamental you see that a lot of special teams units are just, either maybe not clueless, but they're not executing the right way?
Well, there's a few of them, but I'll tell you that I think kickoff return is the hardest play in football, and I don't think people train, drop and contact point with the front line guys very well. And that's an extended discussion. That's number one. Number two, when it comes to blocking punts, everybody goes, well, what if we rough the punter? I go, okay, we might. It's occupational hazard. If you're going to play with explosives, like, somebody might get blown up, but, if you're going to use power tools, just know that they could hurt you. But the point is, when you're using power tools, you better know what you're doing. And as long as you know what you're doing, people use power tools every day. Okay. So, and there's some techniques that we have that are hard to explain in a format like this, but they're called power tools. And we know that they're highly volatile, highly physical tools. Okay. But they're fine as long as you learn to know how to use them. You only have three weapons: your eyes, your feet, and your hands. And that's it. And like I always say, keep your eyes on a target, your feet gaining ground, and the hands on all blocks. And, you're going to spend the rest of your natural born life in this game trying to learn how to use your eyes, feet, and hands. One of the things I do know is that you can every foot problem can be traced to an eye problem. If their feet are out of position, their eyes were wrong. Right? Holding's not a violation of the hands, it's a violation of the feet. The reason you hold is because your feet are out of place. The reason your feet are out of place is you were looking at the wrong thing. So, stuff like that. Simple stuff.
Yeah, eyes, feet, hands, right? You can pare everything down. That's a good question that you answered, really, is, what do you watch for on film? Well, everything can go back to eyes, feet, and hands. Everything. Right? What else does it go back to? Your elbow, your rib cage, your knee. So yeah, that's and then the other thing that I think is that, okay, there's two significant advances, maybe three, but two significant advances that have changed the game a real lot from when I was a graduate assistant. We were still 16 millimeter film, and we called them cut ups because you cut the film, right? The first thing that changed the game was videotape. Okay, because now, we could make copies of that tape. And then the second thing that changed the game is, once we went to videotape, it was less expensive to film the game. So what we did is we filmed the sideline, but we didn't cost that much more to buy another camera to film the end zone.
keep in mind that we didn't go to video till 90, and computers weren't really the thing to use until 98. Okay. So we only been using computers in football for 20 years, right? Okay, as far as using film on there. Well, here's what happened. Back then, through the 90s, we only exchanged sideline copy. So the other significant advancement was when we went to digital was intercutting film. We didn't exchange intercuts till late 90s for sure. Okay. And I remember now if you gave any coach you can only have one angle, I'm sure most people would take the end zone shot. But that's not what we had back then with 16 millimeter film. So once you exchange intercut, understand you have twice as much film. It takes a certain amount of time to watch the game sideline, but if you're watching an intercut, the same play takes twice as long. I remember a couple times calling friends of mine going, "Hey, I got your end zone. I got your end zone from North Carolina," because we didn't exchange those. Well, what the computer with an intercut allowed us to do is, because of digital files, is then, if there was a great play in the second quarter of a game, back with 16 millimeter film, you had to get the can out, you had to put the reel on, go till you found the play, and then watch it. Now you can just 2 mouse clicks and you're there, right? You would think, oh, that would make the game easier. It's made it harder because it's allowed for more micro analysis, okay, of really specific things. We used to sit there on the sideline film and go, is that a 3 technique or a 4-eye? Well, with end zone film, you know what it is. Okay. All right. So that now bring up to the current time, videotape, end zone shots, digital files. Now you got guys that'll sit there late at night and go over and over and over and over and over. Let me see every right hash kick between the 40 and the 40, which has brought in a lot of schematics. And I'm going to tell you something. There's a bunch of guys out there that are trying to win with their grease pen. And I call that they're trying to pencil whip you. Okay. And you know where I'm at right now? I just want to whip them. It's a game of technique. And I tell the players, we have simple, effective schemes, and we do it at a high rate of speed. Okay. So why is it done simple? Because you can't coach effort. You can't maximize effort till the assignment is second nature. So if you're always trying to scheme somebody and always giving somebody a new assignment, a new variation, a new this, you can't maximize effort. And my point is every game to me is a technique test. And if I play faster than you, I win.
Full speed decisions.
Full speed decisions.
That's awesome.
That's right. Yeah.
No, that is so important. Yeah, absolutely. Teams will try to, especially now that they have a staff of 3 special teams guys, they're trying to do all these different formations and stuff. And it's all about the fundamentals. It all goes back to technique.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I kick from the right hash to the right corner, and I have since 1986, and, every head coach I'm with says, yeah, well, do you ever change it up? Nope. And I go, does win and get old?
Yeah, still got to stop me.
Or everybody knows where the ball's going. Yeah, including us. And I'll promise you, we'll cover those angles way better than you're going to block those angles.
Yep.
And here's the deal. I mean, not every, it's like a bunch of tough talk sitting here talking like that, but not every play goes my way. I've had some plays go against me. But what I'm exceedingly comfortable with right now is if I go down, I'm going down doing what I believe in. And it's not what you do that matters. It's what you do when it breaks that matters. Can you fix it? And I got a GM car, and I could take a catalytic converter off an Oldsmobile, and I can put it in my Chevy, and I keep going down the road.
Because you know how it works.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, Coach, man, this has been awesome to chop things up with you. I know you're a busy man. One last question before we go. you spent so much time with Pat Hill, obviously during the Fresno State days,
Right.
And you obviously have a connection with Jeff Tedford, and being a Fresno State guy and experiences there. What are the similarities, and also what do you expect from the team this season? I know I saw the Mountain West rankings. You guys are come out as the number one team in the West. I know those don't matter, but what do you think as far as those two subjects?
Well, number one is, hey, if they rank you number one, it's nice to be thought of that they believe you're that highly competitive. Okay. I mean, that ranking won't win us any games. So you got to go out there and play for it. But I don't know many last place ranked teams that win the league either usually. It recognizes, I think, the work that we've done. But the thing that's unique at Fresno State right now is Jeff Tedford's the head coach, who I coached with here in '97. When Pat was the head coach. Pat's still around, comes to practice, not every day, but often. Does the radio, loves coming to the office. You Jethro Franklin, who played at Fresno State and then spent the last 15 or so years in the NFL. I coached with in '97. He's on the staff. Tim Skipper, who was a captain for us in '99, and then went off in his coaching career, and he was around at University of Florida, etc. He's his dad and two brothers both been in the NFL. He's back on the staff. J.D. Williams played in 4 Super Bowls with the Bills and played at Fresno State and was a GA for us back in '97. Kevin Coyle, the defensive coordinator, who I introduced Pat to and was here. He's been in the NFL the last 20-something years. Kevin Coyle's back at defensive coordinator. So between Jeff, myself, Jethro, Skip, JD, Kevin Coyle, I mean, more than half the staff's been friends for 25 years. And we share a value system. Like I said before, we share a belief in teaching technique. We love coaching, but we love each other. And I'll tell you what, there's a lot of people in our game, especially since the big money started to happen, that are not having fun. And we're having a ball. And there's one thing that's never changed in Fresno. Fresno is a really hot town in the summertime. It's a really blue collar place. It's a small town that got big. And if you don't like playing football, then you'll hate Fresno State. Okay. But if if you want the whole unbelievable campus experience and all this, then go to Stanford. Okay. But if you like to play ball, and I mean blue collar ball, where we line up and we hit people, and love being around teammates who are the same way, then this is your place. It's small enough to know you, large enough to serve you. And this is a football program for people who like to play football.
That's awesome, man. You got me fired up, Coach. I want to go play for you now.
Okay, good. Okay, have at it.
All right, Coach. Well, hey, man, I appreciate it. It's been awesome to get to know you and obviously learn a little bit on your tutelage, and best of luck to you and the Dogs this season.
For sure. Hey, let's go. Shut up and hit somebody, right?
Shut up and hit somebody anytime, any place, anywhere.
It's time for some Bulldog ball.
All right, Coach. Thanks a lot. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, bye-bye.
A word from our sponsors. This show is brought to you by The Kicker's Bible. The Kicker's Bible. Ever wondered about how many kicks you should do during practice after pulling your quad multiple times? Repeatedly snapping the ball over your punter's head? Keep getting dumped by all your girlfriends for missing kicks? Well, we can't help with all those things. But for some of those, there's The Kicker's Bible. Proven training methods and secrets used by NFL specialists, written by yours truly, Brett Arkellian, with over 20 NFL specialist accounts, including personal excerpts from record-setting and Hall of Fame specialists David Akers and Shane Graham. If you are interested in any of these fantastic tips and excerpts discussed in this episode, visit IcemanKicking.com or go to my Twitter bio, Iceman_kicking.